welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by not only an author, but somebody who has worn many hats and who has made a wide range of very interesting things. And I am so excited to talk about this book and her career. So welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Nicole Conn, and the name of the book is Descending Thirds. It's taken me 25 years to get it out into the world.
Oh, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
an accomplishment. Before we talk about the book itself, could you tell our listeners a little bit about your career? Because you've done a lot of super interesting things, and I'm really curious about how it led to this project.
Well, I started writing when I was in third grade. My stepfather created a contract. He was going to be my agent because I'd written such a nice story in third grade. And I always wanted to be a writer, a storyteller of some sort. When I got out of high school, I became a heavy drinker because I thought that's what writers did that whole route, quit drinking at 24. And I started writing in the mornings at 4 in the morning before I would go work out and go to work, and finished a couple of really bad novels that way. And in the meantime, I decided, because of my love of film, because I'd watched black and white film from third grade on as well, and been a complete, ravenous black and white film watcher, I decided to move into filmmaking. And I was going to do a short that ended up become a feature, Claire of the Moon, which was my first film that came out in the 90s and had a 10-year re-release and a 20-year re-release. It's become sort of a cult classic. And I went on to get a 3-book deal shortly thereafter from Simon Schuster because I had a lesbian novel and they wanted to do a lesbian label. And my next book was mainstream and they published that as well. And then, so I was kind of doing a mix of things. And it wasn't until my son, my very micro preemie son, was born that I really started focusing solely sort of on visual storytelling, documentary filmmaking, that sort of thing. But I had written Descending Thirds the year my daughter was gestating with my ex, and I experienced this super creative burst, and things just came to me. And so I wrote the script as an outline, and then wrote the book from that, and got all the agencies wanted it. Everybody said it was going to be a huge bestseller, and we couldn't sell it. So it got set up as a film, and then that went into turnaround. And I kept rewriting it over the years, but I was doing so much film work in the LGBTQ plus community that I didn't pay much attention to it. I finally found a manager, Ken Atchity, who loved it in 2017, and he convinced me to publish it, and we're publishing it through Story Merchant Books. So I'm very excited about that.
Oh, does your process or your writing strategies change whether you're writing for film or for the page?
Yeah, it's very, very different. Screenwriting is not nearly as specific or demanding or challenging. My my work always goes this way, though. My first draft is just spew, vomit everything out that you can possibly think of, even stuff that's stupid, whatever comes to mind. And I'm a believer in rewriting is writing. I revise, 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 revise. I had an editor, Catherine Forrest, who told me, "You're not done until when you look at the book, you want to vomit." So I kind of got there several times over.
Yeah. Oh, I bet after a lengthy gestation process like that. Um, so what is the inception point for this novel? I understand that you have experienced the classical music world a little bit through your mother. What was it that drew you to creating a story in that world?
I think it was two things. One, my mother was a classical pianist before she decided to have the three of us, or her first 3 kids, all daughters. And the day that I was born, my father had bought her a new piano. So when we came back from the hospital, she tossed me in the crib and ran to her new piano and didn't come and get me till I was crying for food. And I think being exposed to classical music literally as a little 1-year-old infant, it sort of became imbued into my DNA, and I just love classical music. I have a love affair with it. But the story is far more thematically, I think you might know this because you've read most of it, about what price fame and glory. It's like, what are we willing to do to make the next run? And in the classical piano world, the sliver of success is so thin. There's only two or three that can be at the top at any given time, and so it's even more challenging, I think, than some of the other arts. But it applies to really artists and anybody who's dealing with, even in the corporate world. Do I sell my soul to get that promotion? Do I compromise everything I believe in to get that promotion or get this money or whatever? And I think that's a huge question everybody asks today, especially when there's so much uncertainty. So yeah, I think it takes place in a classical music world because I love that universe, but it's far more about the what price fame as well as the triangular love story, which is pretty fabulous.
Yeah, it is. So let's transition to talking about Alexandra. I'd
Yeah.
love to know about how you began to shape her as a character. And, I think it's really interesting to talk about, character development in a story where, like, one of the big questions is, like, how much of yourself are you going to lose if you get the thing that you want? So could you talk about sort of shaping her for that story?
She is basically really the three, Conrad, Sebastian, and Alexandra, sort of represent the three different kinds of artists. Alexandra is basically fueled by her heart. She's emotion driven. Everything is about, her heartbeat is her metronome sort of thing. Whereas Sebastian, who's fabulously handsome and very charming and can get people who don't like classical music to like it just because of who he is, he's not very talented, but boy, does he have the charm. And, he's just magnificent to package, which is part of our whole universe. And Conrad is truly a genius savant. All he cares about is the purity of his music. He doesn't care if anybody wants to listen to it or not. And so those are sort of the three general divisions of artists, who create in our world. So that's how they came about. Alexandra is very, very special to me because she also suffers the imposter syndrome, which I suffered until my last film. After my last film, I was like, you know what? I kind of have a legacy. I guess I am a filmmaker, you know? So it's one of those things I think we all, anybody who does anything in the creative arts, we're all so sensitive and insecure for the most part that we always wonder, am I good enough kind of thing.
Mm. Yeah, because it does feel very universal in some ways in the questions that all artists have to ask themselves when they are, I think, measuring expression versus success in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. Very well put.
Thank you. But the classical music world does give it, I think, a little bit more of an edge because there's something so interesting about that, like the contrast of like the civilized, rarefied world of classical music and then
Yeah.
just the utter ruthlessness that people will participate in.
Yeah, exactly. It is. It's sort of like such beautiful souls who are, subjected to the world of being what I call bean counters, the business that is always the heartbreaking part of everything that we do, whether it's film, writing, you name it. It's like they control the purse strings and for the most part, oftentimes have no idea what creativity is about. And so it's a very hard balancing of art versus commerce, authentic versus packaged, that sort of thing.
And that becomes to go on a little bit of a tangent, but I think that is so much more. It's just been ratcheted to another level in our social media world, where you have to sort of also be your own marketer and your own brand
Oh my
ambassador
God.
and all these things.
Bane of my existence.
Yeah. Um,
Truly.
could we talk a little bit about this is something that really interests me, writing about music, because I'm always like really fascinated by the process of describing in words an art form that like you don't perceive that way. So music or images. How do you capture music on the page and the emotions that it inspires?
I think that probably was one of the most challenging things is to try to explain, especially to the layperson, what the music feels like, what the music does, how you're driven by the music. Have you gotten to the part where Conrad and Alexandra play together? all the time. Yeah. It's like that. That is one of those things where music literally becomes words for them. All of the tenor of what's going on between them, the, bristling, searing chemistry that's happening between them, all of that stuff is expressed in their music. But then how do you express that to the person who's reading it? And I really, really worked hard to make it as accessible as I could, given its classical piano. I didn't want people to be put off by the classical music aspect because it really is so much more than that. But at the same time, I wanted to express the feelings certain pieces, evoke. I'm super excited in the audiobook that will be coming out in late July or August. All the times where you see the repertoire pieces, I'm going to have 30 or 40 seconds of music in the background with that piece so that people can hear how gorgeous classical music is. And one of the best parts of this is, and it's a very full cycle, my poor mother suffers from ravaging Parkinson's. Every day she goes to the piano and she can't play anymore at all. She can barely put two bars together, but she's there playing, playing, playing valiantly. It breaks my heart to watch that, but it's like that's how pure her love is for that. That's how pure her passion is for all of that. And I think that the thing that makes me the happiest is she has recordings, and I have like four of her pieces that's going to be on the audiobook. She's also a character in the book. She was a very, very noted piano teacher in New Jersey. So I made her the piano teacher that Alexander first has. Krista Hoven is my mother. And she's the one that plays the four pieces of music that I'm using of hers. And then I got an incredible composer from the UK who's creating the composed music from Sebastian and Conrad.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm very excited too. Listen, it'll be a really nice having
I
read.
think you will enjoy that
Yeah,
specifically.
it's so great. Wow. And I'm really glad that you mentioned the collaboration between Alexandra and Sebastian, because the book really made me think a lot about, it made me understand, I think, why artists can have such turbulent love lives sometimes,
Yeah.
because making art with somebody is so vulnerable and so intimate,
Mhm.
that I'm sure it's very, very easy to blur those like professional and personal boundaries.
Absolutely. I think that just because of the emotionality of it. I mean, it's constantly triggering feelings at all times because it's music, right? And so and a very refined, music. So I do think that interplays with the characters as well.
Mm. I would love if we could talk a little bit more about some of the ideas of artistic risk taking that you
Mhm.
are dealing with, and how that decision can have such high stakes when you are at the career level that Alexandra is at. So can you talk a little bit about, like, maybe also how her current status in the art world shapes the decision she makes? If that was that a
Well,
assessment?
yeah. I mean, I think the book opens with the Ketterling International Ketterling competition, which is completely based on the Van Cliburn piano competition, which is held only but once every 4 years. And when she first gets there, she's got a game plan that she might do Prokofiev's third, but then realizes when she hears the Russian play it that there's no way she can stack up against him. And she's trying to think of what is the safest way I can kind of inch into third place. So she's choosing her music based on how she can place in the competition, until at the moment that it really matters, she decides, hey, I'm going to play what I want to play, and she plays rock second, and that gives her a very good competition result. So she too, even though she's much more of a purist than Sebastian, also weighs those risks. It's like I discovered early on, I don't know how, and I'm so grateful that I did, not to fear failure. I have failed many times, but every time I've learned from it. And I go off on a ledge sometimes because I do a lot of stuff that's considered, door busting maverick. In my last film, I intercut contemporary dance into the love scene, which 18 producers that I went through said, that's insane. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. It's a magical flight of fancy. And it's everybody's favorite scene. So it's like you have to be able to take those risks if you want to do anything that punches an impact or is different or unique. And we all strive now for not copying. And we have AI doing stuff for us, people, constantly purposing stuff. So it's hard to be unique and authentic. So you have to keep trying those things that are different, and that may mean you fail, so.
Yes. Yeah. Conditioning yourself to failure is really tough, but really essential, I think, to being.
It's a must, or you cannot. It's a must. I just tell all newcomers, do not be afraid to fail. You will learn so much and you won't do it again.
And there is, an upside to it, because I think like once you get good at it, like when you fail, you're like, oh, good. Okay, another failure. Now I can move on and do the next thing.
Yes, I just had that experience. I wrote and created the first LGBTQ plus dating competition show called Coming Out for Love. 16 one-hour episodes, and I still haven't been able to sell this. It's streaming online, comingoutforlove.com. But it's like, is it before its time? Because they just, like the Bachelor universe can't deal with a lesbian version of, that kind of dating program. So again, it's like that would be considered a commercial failure. I'm very, very proud of it because it's got such a great snapshot of who our community is, with the 16 gorgeous, diverse, talented contestants and 19 guest judges from our community. So it's a nice display of who we are. I just need to figure out how to get it out into the world, but I don't let it stop me. I just keep moving on.
Well, I've
also discovered with like Descending Thirds didn't happen for 25 years. Projects only happen when the world is ready for them to happen. You can push the boulder up the hill trying to get something made. And if the world or whatever is not ready for it, it's just not going to happen.
And that can be so hard, because as an artist, you sort of have to be willing to be extremely proactive at times, and then a little bit more passive.
Yeah. And it's like, when do you do what? It's like, I talk about retail marketing all the time, which is actually communicating with people on Facebook or LinkedIn or on my YouTube channel. I learn a lot from my fans that way. And it's very important that you do it. But when you are working 10 to 12 hours a day trying to finish a project, you can't do that on top of it. So I'm constantly in this ebb and flow of how much I can market myself.
That is the big challenge these days for all sorts of artists. Well, I hope that this has provided at least a more relaxed marketing experience for you.
Yeah, it's not like movies. It's a very different thing. People who read are very different than the film goers. It's a whole different universe. I always used to say, writing novels is like smoking weed, and making a film is like taking acid. It's just a completely different experience altogether.
That, that like is very vivid, and it makes a ton of sense. So
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Before we go, what's on your horizon? What are you working on next?
I'm doing Blue Love Dance, a Cine romance, which is the making of that love scene that's intercut with the dance, and how it took me a year to cut that in a variety of different ways to figure out how it would work. And also it's the behind the scenes of what happened trying to make that film over 7 years. My sister had committed suicide 18 months later. My brother was shot in the chest, dead. And then my father died. So within a 24-month period, I had those 3 deaths on top of what I was trying to do. And it really informed the film. And that's why the film went from one title to be the title that it is, which is More Beautiful for Having Been Broken, because that's what happened to me. It was like, I was so broke. I didn't even know if I was ever going to climb back out of the hole. But once I did, it really informed my art in that film, largely. So.
Well, that sounds absolutely lovely, and I really look forward to seeing that when I
Oh,
can.
yeah, please do. That's my favorite of my films.
Oh, great. All right. Well, thank you once again. And for our listeners, please check out Descending Thirds. It's available now, and it will be available when you hear this. So head to your favorite bookstore or library, wherever you like, Amazon, wherever you like to go for those things.
And leave a review, please.
Yes.
And I can't wait till you finish. I want to hear from you when you finish it.
I will. I'll be in touch.
Thanks.
It is time to close this chapter. We'll see you next time.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.